Hello and welcome back to revise GCSEhistory.co.uk, the number one place for your GCSE history revision. This video here is the second video in the topic, the Mormons, and in this video today we're going to be looking at the movements of the Mormons in the East. So, before we start, in the East, the Mormons had to move around quite a lot. They were very unpopular and had to keep moving. So they settled in one place, ended up being driven out, settled in another as a result of being driven out of the first place, ended up being driven out again, and basically it was just like that all the time. They were driven out of place to place and had to keep moving in the East due to religious persecution. In the previous video we've looked at some reasons as to why the Mormons were persecuted for their religion, and if you're unfamiliar with that, you may wish to watch video 1 in the topic of the Mormons to find out a bit more about that. So the first place the Mormons settled in was Kirtland, Ohio, and we're gonna just read through what happened in Kirtland and why they were driven out of there and had to find somewhere else to settle. So in Kirtland, Ohio, the Mormons were hard-working and successful people, and they founded a bank in Kirtland. Many non-Mormons who lived there, the Gentiles, invested in the bank for religious reasons. They thought that because the Mormons were close to God, if they invested in the Mormon bank, they would be investing their money in God and saw it as a very secure investment. So invested in God, that idea. In a financial crisis, the Mormon bank went bankrupt and everyone who had invested lost the money that they had invested. They lost their investments. Although it was no fault of the Mormons were blamed for this and driven out of Kirtland. Joseph Smith, the Mormon leader, was tarred and feathered by locals, so they poured lots of sticky tar on him, then they poured feathers on him. Very unpleasant, very hard to get off. Well, that's what they used to do in those days to punish people. So they settled in Kirtland, founded a bank. Non-Mormons thought, hey, let's invest in this. It's kind of close to God, it might be a good investment. Bank went bankrupt in a financial crisis through no fault of the Mormons, and then they were driven out and had to find somewhere else to live. So then they settled in Missouri. So in Missouri, the Mormons were mixing with blacks and encouraging them to join the Mormon church on an equal basis. This annoyed the Gentiles because they were jealous of their hard work as it was, and they thought that if blacks joined the Mormon church, there will be growing numbers of the Mormons. So basically, the Gentiles didn't like this because they feared overpopulation of the Mormons. The non-Mormons, I've just said that. The non-Mormons also thought that they would be swamped by growing numbers of the Mormons, and the Mormons would take over the government. As a result, because of the Gentile fear, the government issued an extermination order, and the Mormons had to flee from Missouri. This picture up here is a painting showing Mormon homes being looted, people being burnt out of their wooden cabins in the East, as the Mormons were driven out of Missouri and an extermination order was passed. So again, the Mormons need to find somewhere else to live, and they decided to settle in Nauvoo in Illinois. Okay, let's have a read through what happened there. So the Mormons rebuilt the town of Commerce and called it Nauvoo. The town grew rapidly. The Mormons gained a charter which enabled them to run Nauvoo as an independent state. Joseph Smith, this is key in explaining why he was actually killed in Nauvoo. Joseph Smith said he had a revelation from God, and God told him that a Mormon man should marry more than one Mormon wife. So Joseph Smith said that he had this revelation from God, and as a result he introduced polygamy in 1844. So it wasn't actually until 1844 when polygamy was introduced. The Gentiles thought polygamy was wrong and feared it would lead to Mormon overpopulation. Because if Mormon men had more than one wife, they'd have lots of children, and these children would grow up to be Mormons. So basically the Gentiles were annoyed at polygamy. They thought it was wrong and immoral and blasphemous against Christian views. Some Mormons actually thought polygamy was wrong too. So it wasn't just the non-Mormons that disagreed, and they criticised Joseph Smith in a Mormon newspaper that they'd set up. They denounced him as a false prophet, saying that this isn't what God said, you've just made this up, it's a load of rubbish. So even some Mormons criticised him in a Mormon newspaper, and Joseph Smith responded to this criticism by destroying the printing presses of the Mormon newspaper, and this made him look very foolish and look like a dictator. Smith, so another thing he did to annoy people, Smith also announced his intention to stand for President of the US, annoying Gentiles further. So Smith said, I'm going to run for president in the election. And this annoyed Gentiles because they thought, oh God, the Mormons really are taking over. They're going to take over the government and everything. And they thought that Joseph Smith didn't have a bad chance of actually becoming president because of the rapidly growing Mormon numbers. So as a result, because he annoyed them so much, Joseph Smith, the Mormon leader, was thrown into jail and actually killed when an angry mob attacked him in jail in 1845. So that was the end of Joseph Smith. So, the Mormons moved around quite a lot in the East before finally deciding to go west, and we're going to be looking at the Mormon decision to go west in a later video. So, remembering the movements of the Mormons. This is often something that confuses quite a lot of students, as they can't remember where the Mormons lived. So, first they lived in Kirtland, second Missouri, third Nauvoo, and finally Salt Lake City, or the Great Salt Lake as it was called at the time. We've not actually looked at Salt Lake City in this video, but in a later video we're going to be looking at the Mormons moving to Salt Lake City in a bit more detail. So Kirtland, Missouri, Nauvoo, Salt Lake City. I've developed a little mnemonic, a bit silly to help you remember this, and the mnemonic is, kind monsters never scare lively children. Kind monsters never scare lively children. Kirtland, Missouri, Nauvoo, Salt Lake City. So that's a little mnemonic that you might want to use to help you remember that. And this mnemonic also features in the complete set of notes in the Mormon topic. So, a little bit of a challenge for you here. This will be interesting. Come up with your own mnemonic to help you remember the movements of the Mormons. So it needs to be KMN-SLC. Or, instead of SLC, you could have Great Salt Lake, or SLV, Salt Lake Valley. It's up to you for that bit. So come up with your own mnemonic to help you remember it if you don't like mine. And then once you've got your mnemonic, type it in the comments section of this video on YouTube, and we'll have a look who can come up with the best mnemonic, and I'll give you a little mention in the video. I think the best mnemonic, I'll say the best 5, I'll give you a little mention. So that'll be interesting. Come up with your own little mnemonic. There we are. Alright, so that's everything we need to cover for today's video. Here are 4 just little quick questions based on the content of today's video. Pause the video here, jot down some answers if you wanna. If not, watch them with me and we'll do the answers together. Question 1, why were the Mormons driven out of Kirtland? Well, the Mormon Bank collapsed. Investors lost their money that they'd invested. Why was an extermination order issued in Missouri? The Mormons were mixing with blacks. And the Gentiles feared growing numbers of the Mormons. There we are. Next question, question 3. Why did Smith destroy the printing presses of a Mormon newspaper? They criticised him for polygamy, which was introduced in 1844. And finally, question 4, a bit of an unusual question, because we've not actually looked at the answer explicitly in today's video. Give 2 reasons why Joseph Smith was killed in 1845. I can think of 3, so I'm going to do 3. Introduced polygamy. That annoyed many non-Mormons, and actually some Mormons. So he was killed by an angry mob of non-Mormons, if we remember. That was in 1844. ran for president. Well, he announced his intention to run for president. He didn't actually get a chance to do that. He was killed. And finally, he, and truthfully, I'm trying to think now, looked like a dictator when he destroyed the printing presses of the Mormon newspaper, when he was criticised by them. Alright, so there are the answers to the quick 4 little questions for today's video. Thanks for watching this video today, and I do hope you found it useful. If you have found it useful, head over to the website revisegcsehistory.co.uk, where you can view more videos like this on medicine through time and the American West, and also access a comprehensive range of revision materials. If you have found it useful, please do tell your friends and everyone you know about us, so we can get more and more hits. Thanks for watching, see you guys soon.